The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, our nuclear ban treaty, entered into force at the United Nations on the 22nd of January of this year, 2021.
This is the first point for the Greenham March, and we're starting off at Cardiff at the City Hall, which is really exciting because we're basically reliving the steps that the Greenham women took 40 years ago.
I was quite surprised when I came here this morning how emotional I felt about it, because actually being here 40 years later and thinking back to that day, I was just 22 years old. Going on a march led by women was something different.
None of us knew on that day in 1981 how this march would change so many lives. It meant sharing a goal, an ambition, a belief in a better and nuclear-free future.
I'm here because I want to commemorate the march that women started 40 years ago today. Without them, there wouldn't have been a Greenham Common Peace Camp.
We are incredibly grateful to you for commemorating what we did 40 years ago. There were 4 of us that organised this march when I had the idea. Carmen was the first one who said, that's a good idea, I'll help you with that. Oh, great. It won't just be me then. And then 2 other women came forward, Laini and Lynn. We strive to be a fairer, greener nation of sanctuary. And I'm very proud that Greenham started in Wales.
Given that the climate change and issues around warfare are so connected, and it's so necessary to see them as connected, it's just great that we're reminding ourselves of the power of collective action.
Hand in hand, the line extends, sing along if you do it, all around the 9-mile fence, 30,000 women chant, bring the message home, carry freedom home, yes, near home and far away, carry freedom home.
So really it started in 2018 when we started to interview the Greenham women. So we listened to them what they wanted. We had an idea of recreating the march. My mum, Marie Knowles, she took me to Greenham. And then when she died, I started to realise that no one was talking about Greenham and remembering it. Anyone younger than me had never heard of it, which I was outraged about. It's cultural robbery, it's a disaster. So having lost her stories, I realised we could make a kind of online archive for lots of women's memories about Greenham.
A broad term to describe how it changed women's lives, the experience of being involved, is the word empowerment. And that means something very different today. Women were empowered through that experience by things like not being afraid of the police, not being afraid to be arrested, not being afraid to speak out, to stand up, not being afraid to say no to a violent husband, not being afraid to come out as a lesbian. So it was empowerment, but true, deep empowerment. I think I was at Greenham welcoming them on arrival because I was involved with a peace group, so we did a little minibus trip up there. I went up again to vote for it to be women only because I was also in a women's consciousness raising group, so I was learning my early feminism and developed a political understanding of the links between militarism and patriarchy.
I thought about actions that would go with my sense of humour, or would, I loved it when we went to Newbury Racetrack and we ran away from them. That was brilliant. And then I was pretending to be frightened, and so he was going, it's all right,
No way.
don't worry. He'd go like that, and he was going, love, it's all right, it's okay. I'm going, I'm frightened, and he'd step and I'd step back like that, and then I'd just run. And all the women sort of all linked up and linked arms, so I was at the back of them because he was, if he got me, he'd have killed me.
I first heard about it because of my aunt. So, you know, she took part in a lot of the actions. She was there to embrace the base. I loved hearing her stories. There's nothing like retracing their steps to actually go out and fight for the things that you care about.
The Women's March for Peace, which they drew on the first evening of the protest march in Community House. Community House was created by Reverend Cyril Summers. When the original walkers went from Cardiff and stopped off in Newport, Cyril went and met them and brought them here to Community House. So now we're doing the same thing again. The spirit of creating peace goes on.
We have got lots of wonderful women on the team. We've got Claire here who will be helping keep our spirits up with singing. This is wonderful.
There's an increasing level of activism for young women around climate change particularly, but it's all mixed. I still think there's a great value in experiencing doing women-only actions. You develop a slightly separate politics, so to talk about non-violent direct action, you've got to define violence. And women's experience of violence is very different from men's experience of violence.
And that's everything so wonderful. And many your age have been burned in the fire. But you're a horrible girl making a horrible scene.
We can take incredible strength from what those women did and inspiration. You know, we're facing our own set of quite overwhelming and, you know, huge challenges now, you know, existentially and with the climate crisis. And actually, I think we can look at the way they went, well, this is what I can do. It doesn't matter if it doesn't seem like it's going to be transformative overnight. This is what I can do. And actually, it gained this huge momentum.
Back in the day, I was Bristol's activities coordinator and used to send hundreds of coaches to Greenham Common. It's just a wonderful occasion to celebrate what women did. It made the whole country aware of nuclear weapons.
This is energising.
We were quite a small group of walkers today, and it was the longest day. So suddenly to have their energy, that was like invigorating and marvellous.
There's no better feeling in the world than working together with groups of women for a common cause. The first moment for me was the moment that the shout went up that 30,000 women were holding hands around 9 miles of fence. Greenham was never really a single issue campaign. It was obviously so much more than that, and about the world that created those weapons.
So when I left Greenham, I was determined that our next step had to be to ban nuclear testing. On the 27th of August, we held the first Weaving the webinar. We had Setsuko Thurlow, a schoolgirl in Hiroshima when the Hiroshima bomb hit the centre of Hiroshima, and only a couple of girls from that school, including Setsuko, survived. So this is all about weaving the web and making the connections and bringing the 40 years since the march all up to date, because so many women are still so active.
Hungry women, and we are singing for our lives.
Another really important aspect of the Greenham Women Everywhere project is doing outreach.
It was like a massive university of life for the women that were at the camp and the women that visited the camp and then took that out into their own communities. I feel like feminism has been so valuable for me, and NVDA, non-violent direct action. It's been really powerful way of being assertive and fair and kind, and I feel like I wanted other people to benefit from that. I wanted them to have the gifts my mum had given me.
On January the 1st, 1983, we climbed over and lots of women danced on the silo inside the base.
The women on top of the silo are still singing and they're still circling and they're waving.
Can you wave back to the women? Woo!
Feels absolutely amazing and slightly overwhelming.
Amazing, I can't stop crying.
Just incredible to actually touch the gates again, this congregation of Greenham women coming together again.
There's a little bit of the fence still there and the barbed wire as well. And then we just crossed it and we walked across the common, and it was like, well, that's because of you guys.
So women found their independence, they found their autonomy, their ability to make decisions for themselves about their lives. But women also came to Greenham and learned to enjoy the company of other women.
Came from a really sort of working class family, and my achievements as a woman, there was nothing. I was expected to get married and have children. There was an air show, and I'd gone with some friends to the air show, and as I was coming out of Bluegate, I now know, this woman was waving, and for some reason I just couldn't get her out of my head. And one night I just came back. I never left.
We bleed for our rights. In our fight, you try to shatter our light, try to restrict our right to protest. You give us no rest. Injustice, do we burn down the structures that tore us to shreds?
We are on Greenham Common, and we're having a big party because the Greenham women won the Common back, and we can.
I haven't been back here. It's been absolutely wonderful reconnecting with women and the land. You know, it was a collective dream that the missiles would be gone and the common would be there for all of us to be able to use.
The gates have been opened, freeing the land, freeing our hearts, our lives, and women dance, reclaiming the common, the earth.
We live in Newbury. Unless we come here, our generation come here and bring our children, this history wouldn't be passed on.
We've just increased our military spending on Trident by 40%. We're seeing endemic levels of male violence and terrorism against women and girls. And we have a climate crisis. Women are needed now more than ever. I think it's time to seize the day.
Should grow up hearing stories about women who have challenged, who have said no.
It's not that much trouble to just walk and to say to people, this is important.
If these events actually inspire young people to become involved, then that would just be fantastic.
I think we can use this as a jumping off point, to carry on the great work of the Greenham women.